Hello, everyone. I am Colleen Ferrari with Small Business USA. I am so happy to have everyone here today, and I am really excited to introduce our guest, Andrew Moran from Merchant Solutions. So welcome, Andrew.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna brag about Andrew a little bit because Andrew, first of all, everybody needs to know Merchant Solutions, they see all the money that we waste, right? They know all the ways that small business owners waste money. So between the two of us today, Andrew, we're a dangerous pair, right? We see all the waste going out. But Andrew is the member of the inaugural class of certified payment professionals in 2012. But I love what you've been doing. And I know that you know so many people in our small business network, and no one has anything but great things to say about you. You're really making a huge impact in the world. But for anybody who doesn't know, Certified Payment Professional, CPP, is the only accreditation in the payment card industry and requires a minimum of 3 years of industry experience, signed recommendations, an extensive exam. So if the person who is dealing with your merchant services isn't accredited and they're not a CPP, you probably need to be a little concerned because they're not really looking at your business account the way that they should. I hope I did you a service with that. I probably missed so much important stuff, Andrew. So why don't you tell everybody about yourself?
All right. Yeah. Well, I guess to reiterate, name's Andrew Moran. I'm with Merchant Solutions LLC. We provide all sorts of payment services, payment application services. So that's everything from the basic, you walk into a retail location and they've got a terminal sitting there and you swipe the card through it, right through to point of sale system. We do online integrations, electronic invoicing, QuickBooks integrations. Basically, we just any way that you can handle a credit card to be accepted, we have a way to do it. So that's, it's what we do. That's the main part of our business. We also deal a little bit in business funding. So that's what we do.
Awesome.
Yep.
Hey, there's two things that I want to talk about at the end of this call, but so Andrew and I have compiled a list of things that really hurt business owners. So we think this is going to be great for all of you to just take a look and kind of look back at your business a little bit and look back at yourself and see where are things slipping through the crack. Andrew's got tons of expertise to share with you. And then at the end, we're really hoping to put this into a half an hour call. So we're going to cover a lot of information pretty quickly. But at the end, I think everybody is so sick of hearing me talk about the power of many. And your advisory boards and Small Business USA, we're all about taking business owners and connecting you with the right advisor, but also putting you on a board of people that really help you and guide you. And we talk about the power of many and how important that is. But we're going to talk about the biggest mistakes surrounding the power of one, the 5 most detrimental power of one mistakes that you can make as a small business owner. And then I also want to talk about networking golf because hallelujah, we're about to launch. It's so exciting. And we get questions about that every month. So we're going to save that to the end. So keep me honest. You ready to go through our list, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm ready. You drive here. I'll follow.
All right. So the first way that business owners lose money and miss out on profit is by being disorganized, right? So that's in every research study, that is the number one reason.
Yeah. That's one thing too that I see a lot of. I look mainly on the payment side of things, what they're taking payment in from, but that actually touches the transactional side of things. So a lot of times what I'm seeing are disorganization in inventory, like they're stocking the wrong things, things that aren't selling, churning their wheels on certain things that, just aren't making them money. That's a lot of what we see on the cost side of things. And, one way that we look at that is point of sale systems. You could, instead of having a ledger or something like that, you could actually have, a much better way to manage your inventory expenses, your payroll expenses, just by better tracking of things. Preparing for taxes. I can't tell you how many businesses that we deal with that we'll see that they'll make sales all quarter and then their quarterly taxes come due and they're like, oh, wait, we don't have money for that. That's just a matter of organization, just, taking and setting aside and knowing what's coming and having a way to calculate that real time rather than just be surprised at the end.
We were talking about this a little bit ago, Andrew and I, and we were talking about the biggest way that being disorganized really hurts you as well is those leads that fall through the crack. And just all of the missed opportunities to take care of things. And, I was just thinking, I was looking through this list of what people don't spend money on that saves them money. And I was looking at data security and PCI compliance.
Yep.
And I'm like, that's one of those things, right? That unless you have somebody like Scott, and I'm sure that Web Context RX is probably all over this too. But if you're not really focused on chasing your business owner down for that security piece, that's got to be pretty dangerous.
Yeah. So the PCI, to back up, PCI DSS is payment security, payment card industry digital security standards. Basically, it's the rules that you're supposed to follow to make sure that you're in line with all the practices the card brand set up. And again, I'm speaking specifically toward the credit card side of things, that you're doing things properly so that your customer data isn't being compromised. Part of it is a questionnaire that you're supposed to take, and it's a pretty extensive questionnaire. And really, the questions on it are very difficult for many business owners to understand because they feel like they were written in legalese. They're just really complicated. Even IT professionals I talk to sometimes look at the question and say, I don't know how to answer that. A lot of it's very basic. A lot of it is, they'll phrase a question that's, 2 sentences, 3 sentences long. And really all they're asking is, are you changing your system default passwords from password 123 or something like that? They'll have questions about, are PAN data masked? What's PAN data? PAN data is the middle digits of your credit card. So basically all they're saying is if you print the receipt, are you printing the credit card number on the receipt? No. So there's a lot of things that you need to do that are very simple, that are actually already inherent in how your system works that people just don't understand. And then beyond that, the data security requirements are, just things like having your router segmented, network segmentation, up-to-date antivirus on your computers. Just some basic settings that you need to make sure that you're aware of, and who can access the payment infrastructure. So one thing I see a lot of times is Wi-Fi networks. They won't secure their Wi-Fi network separately. And okay, so now you've kind of created a backdoor into your system where, again, you're talking about secured systems and encrypted data, but you have left the front door open if somebody, if you don't actually have that part segmented off. So, that's part of what I see with data security. One thing about it too is everybody thinks it's a bunch of junk and, oh, who cares? It's that stupid questionnaire I have to take every year and yada, yada. When it comes down to it, it's not common. That breaches aren't common. But when they happen, they're devastating. So basically, like let's say you are a merchant and you have a data breach and you accept credit cards. There's a cost per record breach that involves, reimbursing the bank, the reissuance of new credit cards. There's certain forensic scans that you have to go and you have to actually pay them for the scans. There's fines and penalties that'll come down from the card associations. So you're talking tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, even if you're a small mom and pop shop, that'll come right out of your pocket if there's a data security breach. So that's part of it, is the dollar and cents cost. Part of it, too, is you can't accept credit cards while this is all going on. This could take months for them to complete their investigation. And then at the end of all this, you've really done a disservice to your clients. The hardest part is getting your clients back after that, because if somebody goes there and they go, oh, yeah, I went there and then my credit card got stolen, I mean, forget it. You've really, even if you can get over the hurdle of the fees and the temporarily not taking credit cards, now you've got to rebuild your business from scratch. In kind of a negative environment. So that's, when it comes to security and maintaining PCI compliance, it's a big thing for what I see.
I think you walked right into the outdated technology, which was our number 2 thing, and I definitely led you there. But I just want to go back to that disorganized piece a little bit, because I think business changes so fast. And if you're not organized and you're not on top of things that are changing, you need to make sure that you're connected with somebody that does. And I know that Andrew does it. That's part of the service that you get for like having your credit card through Merchant Solutions, right? It's not like you don't pay for his knowledge. He's going to give you his knowledge. He's going to make sure that you're on track and you're protecting yourself. And I also think you have to find those people in your business. If you're not organized to do that yourself, I think it's really important to find those people in your business, whether it's your Merchant Solutions representative, whether it's your website manager, but you need to find people who are going to really look out for you and make sure that you're organized with all of that little stuff, so it doesn't distract from that important stuff. Like, not that that's not important, but driving sales and marketing your business and promoting where you succeed in attaining your goals.
I always look at it as the reasons that people actually got into business. Nobody got into business because they want to be an expert on PCI compliance. Nobody got into business because, they have, they want to know the ins and the outs of how different interchange levels work on transactions. They went into business because they want to produce something that they want to sell, or they want a service that they want to offer. So really it comes down to the more that you could have somebody else knowledgeable who's actually going to help you, take care of these parts of things, the more you could focus on what it is that you actually want to do. If you want to be in the kitchen making pizzas, you can't be out there, doing your IT work as well. So it's all about, what's your passion, go with your passion, and then find good vendors for everything else that you don't want to deal with, and just let that go. Let that work for you.
So the second biggest one was outdated technology, right? You talked a little bit about the points out. I got to tell you, in this day and age, I was in a store in the mall, nonetheless, and they got the little paper and they got that little metal slider thing, and they're
the knuckle buster. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't even feel comfortable giving you my credit card. Like, it was total, like, I will never shop there again because that is. And then I watched that little slip, and I'm like, I just
where does this go now? Yeah,
somewhere safe.
Yep.
This is crazy. Anybody could have taken a picture of this. I was so paranoid, and I'm not generally. Yeah. My credit card has been stolen enough times for me to recognize that I need to pay attention. But on a different note, I was with this. I was at a doctor's office, believe it or not, and I had to pay the difference, and I didn't have a check. I mean, who millennials don't have checkbooks, right? This is the most amazing thing. Like something like 85% of people under the age of 35 do not have a checkbook. They have never bought checks from their bank. It's crazy, right? So I went to the doctor's office. I didn't have a checkbook, and I didn't have cash. And they're like, well, you have this $35 copay. I'm like, okay. So I handed my credit card, right? You wouldn't think this is a big deal.
Yep.
It took this secretary. She all of a sudden gets out her phone, gets out the stupid little PayPal thing, just put in her phone. It took like 20 minutes. I'm like, this person makes how much money an hour? Maybe like $20 an hour. And you just wasted $5 because you just didn't have the right tool to do the job. You know?
And I'll tell you, medical is one area where people don't think of it for credit cards. I mean, we do Connecticut Association of Optometrists. We do several, I work with a lot of dentists, a lot of different doctors of all sorts. People don't realize that, go back maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, if you're a medical practice, maybe 5-10% of your volume came in on credit card. The rest was all insurance payments. Now with all the changes in recent healthcare, first of all, you've got higher deductibles and you've got higher copays. So that's more money coming from the consumer, not from the insurance company. So that's increased credit card volume. The other is HSA accounts. I know I use a health savings account myself. That's just a debit card. And, a lot of times that's a lot of volume that's coming in now too, because a lot of people are using HSA accounts that weren't before. So between the two, where you saw a medical practice where they didn't really care too much about the rates. They didn't really look at their service too much because it was only a small part of their business. Well, now if it's 40-50% of your money coming in that way, it becomes a big deal, not just rate-wise, but also efficiency-wise. And one thing I'm just noting, and this is just coming out in the past couple of months, some major insurers have started paying claims out on credit card. So instead of issuing a claims check, what they're doing is they're giving this medical practice a credit card number, and they key it in manually. Well, these big $5,000-$10,000 transactions, you can get a vastly different rate on that transaction based on what information you're including. Many of these, medical practitioners, this was never something that they were taught. This was, never, a competence that they were given when they were actually set up on their credit card processing, because they were just, swiping cards and here you go. So that's a big area for growth too, has been the medical industry, for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. But just from leads us to the other one is customer service, right? Yep. I was so irritated. I had my daughter with me. I'm like, I don't know what happened in this environment where waiting 10 minutes for somebody to process a credit card makes me nuts, but I'm busy, right? Yeah. And I think about, whether it's a restaurant or that customer service piece, it's the little things, but it's also the big things too.
Yep. It makes it look like you've done it before. You don't want to look like, oh yeah, this person doesn't quite know how to run my credit card. That's, a little bit, makes you a little nervous as the person that's giving the credit card.
Well, there's some great statistics around bad customer service and poor customer service. And that one dissatisfied customer will tell anywhere between 9 and 15 people about their experience with you. And another 13% of unhappy clients tell at least 20 people. And by the way, I'm that 13% because I at least just told 100. Right?
We're not using any names here today, but yeah, okay.
No, but customer service is one of those most important things you can do. And we've been studying whether you have a membership program, whether you have, any kind of business that you have, whether you're a mom and pop shop or you're a B2B, that customer service plays a really important piece. And one thing that has been really fascinating is to learn with that customer service piece is it's that first impression, ease of introduction. How easy is it to sign on with Merchant Solutions? How easy is it to sign on with Small Business USA? Like, what is the level of ease to integration? We'll talk about networking golf in a little bit. All our focus has been how easy, how quick, how fast, how seamless can that transaction be, because people are more in a hurry. So I think anything that we can do to speed things up is going to save us money and not lose it.
Yeah, I've got a kind of a little pet story about a client of mine. They're a manufacturer. They produce a $20,000 machine. They've never, they want to take credit card. I was looking at their statements. They do, they had relatively low volume, but just looking through it, I'm like, okay, well, what are you actually selling here? Because, this isn't, I'm not seeing $10,000, $20,000 sales. They said, oh no, we'd never sell a machine on a credit card. We sell all the parts on credit cards. I'm like, well, what's that? Well, they've got a machine that goes in a production line. When that machine goes down, they have to sell the part for it. Well, they basically found out that the order process for the people that are, in these factories, they have to go, bring this to their purchasing department, get an okay from them, take that back to this department, get the check over to them. The machine's been sitting idle for a week on their floor, and that production line hasn't been producing for their client. They started taking credit cards. So this way, if somebody calls them, they say, yeah, I need this part, and here's my card number, and bam, it ships the same day. So that's like, people don't think about something like that, but for like an industrial, manufacturer like that, the ability to get their parts out quick means that their machine produces more for their customer. And it's, just a way that people don't think about, using electronic payments.
What's interesting is you just brought up one of the other points on there, and that was soft costs. People don't accurately calculate soft costs. So this is fascinating. I wish I came up with it, but so they wrote down the soft costs around being a member of the Chamber of Commerce, right? I'm like, okay, this is, let's see where they're going with this. So the Chamber of Commerce membership is maybe $450 a year, right? So then the time to attend, if you were going to attend 2 events per month, the owner's time to attend is 2 hours. The travel time to and from the event, which it's funny with Small Business USA, I think we only have one board that meets in person now. We've eliminated that travel time because we recognize when we do it virtually, nobody has to travel, and we give them time and we make it easier. And it just gives that business owner time back in their day. But so your time to 2 events a month is 6 hours. The cost of the owner's time, we're saying $75 an hour in this, but most business owners, and we challenge our business owners, you need to think about your business as $500 an hour. Like, you have to think about how much money do you want to earn an hour, and is it worth doing it? Is it going to generate that return on your investment? So if you have not already as a business owner calculated how much time or how much your time is worth, take that moment out and do it, because it'll make you rethink everything. It'll make
that was an interesting exercise.
Mowing your lawn, cleaning your house, right? But then you take the cost of the owner's time at just a measly $75 an hour. So those soft costs are $450 a month times 12 months. Your membership now costs you $5,400 a year to be a member of a Chamber of Commerce, right?
An active member, yeah.
That's a crazy number. So when you look at your Chamber of Commerce membership, which we all have one, right? Probably for last year, did you make $5,400? And what is the return on your investment? And it really kind of puts that, I'll tell you a story of a member of ours. She had belonged to this group as an expensive group. She loved it. It had so much energy. It really drew her in. She had belonged to this group for 2 years or something. She paid $1,200 a year to belong to this group. I'm sorry, she was with them for 3 years. She never, ever, and plus it took a half a day on Saturday, this networking group, right? It was like ridiculous. She never, ever got one lead from that group. And I'm like, well, why do you still go? She goes, well, I love going. They make me feel so energized. And I'm like, okay, would you be just as energized doing something else? I want you to look at that $1,200. And we're not even looking at soft costs, right?
Yes,
$1,200. But and Saturday is double time as far as I'm concerned, right? That's not $500 an hour. That's $1,000 an hour, right? But when you really look at how much is it costing you per hour to do something and look at what does it return? What do you get in return? I think that's the biggest way a business owner can lose money with soft costs. But let's think, like you mentioned some soft costs, right? So you mentioned the time people are wasting to process transactions. Like, you know what I think is the biggest, and you need to help us with this one. The biggest waste, I am so sick of being behind people with those EMV chips.
I figured this is where you're going. Yeah.
Oh, come on. Like, nobody knows how to use this silly thing.
You know what's funny? I walk into, I won't even use the name, but I walk into a drugstore at one location and I go to swipe it and like, no, use the chip. I'm like, okay. So I use the chip. I go to the next location, I use the chip and they go, oh no, swipe it. And I'm like, you're the same chain. How is this even possible? But that's been that's been why I've been working so much lately. The whole EMV transition has been, it's funny, EMV, Europay, MasterCard, Visa, it's been around for 20 plus years. I don't even know. I can't recall exactly, but every other country has had this forever. The United States has been one of the last ones to adopt it, not because it's hard to issue these cards, not because it's a complicated technology, but because of the resistance from all the, business owners, frankly, because it's all this additional equipment they have to buy. Everything has to get certified. It's not like you can just say, oh, okay, we're going to turn on EMV now. It has to go through a certification process. Massive data security checks have to be made on all the different applications. Each processor, each terminal, each software. There's still plenty of, you'll notice one thing too, is like terminals you go out there, they have EMV. If you go to, any place that has an integrated point of sale system, a lot of them are still swiping. So those are, that's because that software hasn't been certified yet. And that merchant is taking liability on those swipe transactions if they were lost or stolen card transactions. So, EMV has been a lot. They've had a lot of we've got a lot of warning it's coming, but the way it rolled out has been kind of like, very piecemeal. At this point, most, all processors have EMV. There's, they all have terminals that are compatible, but some things like, if you'll notice, if you go to restaurants generally aren't using EMV yet. That's because tip adjustment was never part of EMV. You can't, like with your, you go to a restaurant, you swipe a card and you get a receipt with a tip line. They have to go back and adjust that transaction after the fact. EMV, as soon as they run the transaction, it closes it so that they can't go back and adjust for the tip. They just came out with the first few files, and it's only a couple terminal types that can do it, where they're starting to have EMV tip adjustment. So, the restaurant industry is going to be the next one that's going to go through this whole EMV transition. So, it's definitely been it's been a fun ride, I guess. A lot of swapping equipment, a lot of driving out, a lot of answering questions 5 different times because you answered to one person and the next clerk calls you back with the same question. But we're starting to see the light on that.
I'm totally going to ask you the question. I'm going to sound like the dumb one here. Does the EMV card, the EMV, the reader, protects a merchant?
Correct.
Right? Can you swipe it and it will work and it just won't protect the merchant? So if I'm a thief, I want to steal your credit card and swipe it and not use a card.
Yep. So here's how that works. And there's been so many explanations about this. It's really pretty basic how EMV works. If you have a card that has an EMV chip on it and you're a merchant and you swipe that card instead of insert it and run the chip, and it turns out that was a stolen card, the merchant is liable in that transaction. Basically meaning when the actual card holder figures out, hey, I didn't spend $1,000 over here, whatever, they're going to dispute that transaction. That money is going to come back out of the merchant's account. So if the card has a chip and they swipe it and it turns out that was a stolen card, they're liable on that loss. Now, if that card has a chip and they insert the card and process it that way, and it turns out it was a stolen card and it said approved, but it turns out it was a stolen card, the bank is then liable on that loss. The merchant's absolved. They don't have to worry about anything because the chip said it was approved. It was approved. Basic difference between EMV and your mag stripes on the back of the card. The magnetic stripe is just your card data that's encrypted. So when you swipe that, it's encrypted, but it's your card number, expiration date. With the EMV chip, it's creating a unique transaction code each time. So when you insert that chip, it's saying this is transaction number 12345. You go to the next merchant, you insert it, it says this is transaction number 6789110. If somebody was to catch that transaction code and try to reuse it, basically the bank's going to say, nope, we already got that transaction. They're going to lock the card out right away, and then it saves them from the fraud. But again, the way that they're getting people to actually start doing this is by passing that liability on the stolen card fraud to the merchant to get them to incentivize them to start taking EMV.
So Andrew, let's talk about, thank you for that. I'm sorry. So I want to talk about soft costs and like kind of wrap up this conversation.
Yep.
Because I think people don't realize how much money they lose by not having a great merchant account, right? I mean, the fees that some companies pay are ridiculous.
And it's funny too. I've been doing this for almost 6 years, and I've seen thousands and thousands of credit card statements, and over that time frame, merchant account statements. The variation between accounts is phenomenal in terms of cost. I've seen little tiny, few $1,000s a month that have phenomenal rates, and they have no idea that they even have phenomenal rates. And they're like, oh, I don't even know what this is. What is this? I've seen companies that do, $250,000 a month in credit card transactions that are getting absolutely whacked on the fees. And I've seen all in between. Now, generally speaking, once you start getting up that chain, they've got more people looking at it. They've got, somebody who's in the accounting or, doing the actual books or somewhat knowledgeable about what they're talking about. And they'll actually look at these things and audit them. Generally speaking, you get into larger volume, they tend to be somewhat better priced. But, part of it is the rates that the merchant sets or the merchant account provider sets. What rate program do they have? What are they charging them? A lot of it, though, that most merchants don't realize is in certain merchant types, a lot of your expense you can control. Meaning, let's take the example of you're a bakery or you're a restaurant where somebody walks in and swipes a card, or being 2016 inserts their chip or does one then the other and can't figure out which one to do. There's not a lot they can do to control their costs because it's very much set by the processor because they're all card present transactions. Once you start to get into these card not present transactions, there starts to be a lot more variation, B2B transactions, in what the merchant will pay based on what information they include in that transaction. Or, conversely, like I've dealt with a lot of businesses where they're like, oh yeah, we key everything. They call us over the phone and we key it in at the main office. Well, have you ever thought about putting a mobile integration on there? So now that you're taking a card present transaction as opposed to a card not present transaction, two different rates. So a lot of times, part of what the merchant pays is set by the processor. Part of it is what the merchant is doing to actually help control their own costs.
That little bit adds up, right? We have a few vendors that use, and so let me ask you this: are rates negotiable with banks?
Yeah, your credit card processor, they should be. Funny, I mean, I've definitely dealt with people where I could save a bunch of money. They go back to their old processor and they say, hey, this competing person has all these benefits and savings, and they never get back to them. You'd be surprised how often that happens. And then they figure, oh well, if I don't reply, then they'll just give up and go away. And a lot of times people do. They stick with a bad deal because they never got an answer, and then the next thing comes up on their agenda, and it never gets done. Yeah, definitely. You should not only be talking about that, but you should also be saying, hey, am I doing things the right way? I've seen clients where all their transactions might be, they might have, let's say they're on a simple tiered pricing plan. You've got a qualified, a mid-qualified, and non-qualified rate. Qualified lowest, mid is medium, non-qualified is your highest. They've got all their transactions landing in the non-qualified rate. And I'm like, okay, well, why are your transactions landing there? Well, what are you doing? A lot of times it's just procedural. They don't know what they need to do to drive the transaction to a lower rate. So you should always have that open dialogue with your processor about, am I doing things correctly? PCI non-compliance. We talked about the PCI SAQ, the digital security standards that you have to follow. If you don't take that online questionnaire each year, you get hit with a surcharge in your statement. It's usually $20, but I've seen it as high as $35 per month, just for not going online and saying, yes, I do this, I'm compliant with this. Mm-hmm. So, some of these things are very much controllable. Some of them are, just inherent. There's base costs from Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express that no processor can get around. But it's really what's the difference between what that base cost is and what you're paying. That's where you can work with your processor.
I can tell you, we complain about taxes all the time, right? As as a small business community, as a large business community, medium, but 1% in your credit card transaction fees is huge, you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Like, if you're not challenging that number, you need to call Andrew. Andrew, you have to
it's a good day if you can find one. If you can find a 1% rate reduction, that's a good day.
I mean, you can try.
Oh yeah, I've seen
And
them.
I look at PayPal as one of the worst, right?
Yep.
So if you're like, you just need to do your homework and challenge and push and reach out to somebody like Andrew and get a good rate, because there's so much money we just leave on the table. If it's $1,000, 1%. I mean, it's a big deal, right?
And one thing I'll say too, PayPal, Square, there's companies like that out there. I won't bash them. They're actually great for what they're for. I have a Square account myself. I probably used it once last year and twice the year before. I can't beat the rate for running 3 transactions or over 2 years. I can't beat the rate that I have through PayPal or Square, which is 2.75% flat. That's great if you're doing a couple $1,000s a month of transactions. No fixed cost. It's a little bit high discount rate, granted, but it's there when you need it. Once you get over a certain volume of transactions per month, though, it definitely makes sense to look at a real, actual merchant account, because first part of it's the rate. One thing that people don't realize is how much the rate behind the transaction costs, what's called interchange. So we'll use Square for an example, 2.75%. That's actually not a bad fee if you're running very small tickets. It's also not a bad fee like on a rewards card, like a really high level rewards card, even through a processor will cost about that much. Conversely, a debit card, the underlying cost is 0.05% and 22 cents in most cases. So when you pay 2.75% of that transaction, you gave about 2.5% of that transaction to the processor as a fee. So people don't realize that it's great to have that bundled rate, and it makes perfect sense if you're doing occasional sales, a couple $1,000s of volume a month, that's fine. Once you start to get over that, it's not only rates, it's also services. It's a very basic service. There's a lot more things that can be done once you get into an actual merchant account.
Yeah, I do think it's so tedious, but if you take the time and you save a little bit money on your credit card, you save a little bit by going through a lighting, that an electricity vendor, looking at your phone costs and all of those little costs that we as business owners, we're just so excited to get it up and running to begin with. But you got to take advantage. I mean, we just, if you go through, I just did a little quick rundown of what we could save in our house. My husband just signed up for all this stuff. We moved to a new house, and I'm like, we didn't even shop or compare rates. I mean, that little stuff for my home office adds up to $150 a month.
Yep.
And that's, I think about a bigger business is going to be, like a bigger business or someone, my office is a whole different conversation, because there's a lot more expenses. And I think you just have to challenge all those little details. Go through it once, and once a year, just, call people like Andrew and get a rate comparison, and just make sure you're doing the best thing for your business. It's a half a day or a couple hours out of your life that's going to make you, $1,000 or $2,000 a year.
One thing I'll say to that point is as much as possible, insisting on no-term contracts with different vendors, because we do all no-term contracts. Most credit card processors make you sign a 2-3 year term, $400 or $500 early termination fee. So now you get into this, well, can I change? Well, okay, so I'm going to save some money here, but now I have to pay a termination fee, and I got to switch my equipment and this, that, and the third. It's like, you have to start thinking, okay, is this worth doing? Right. So one thing that is always good to have proactively, whether it's our industry or any other business that you're talking to, is to just try to avoid term contracts. So this way you have the opportunity to shop. You're not stuck with somebody because you're in a contract with them.
So Peter asked, can you challenge the annual fee in a high-end business credit card? For example, mileage rewards card. Some are $450 a year. I've tried, and they did not want to budge.
Okay. This is more talking to the credit card issuer side. So like the bank that's actually issuing the credit card, we're on the credit card acceptance side. So we're on the service that takes the transactions in for the merchant. We do no annual fees. A lot of processors actually do have annual fees. In terms of annual fees with the bank for the rewards card, you'd be hard pressed, because if they start waiving it for one, they're probably going to start having to waive it for everybody. But that's definitely, it's worth trying. I mean, I wouldn't say not to try it.
Right. I do think there's been times where I've switched credit cards over, and I think it's just, it just makes sense because it's a lower interest rate and it's got, I mean, that's a great question, Peter. And some will have like no annual fee, and you switch it over and they just assume and they pay that off and they do all the work for you. And it's pretty simple.
I'll give you, again, this is the other side of the industry. That's the issuing side, where the acquiring side. One thing I've done is I actually had a credit card that I paid off completely a few years ago. I let it sit there, and then after about a year or two, they started sending me all sorts of zero interest balance transfer solicitations left and right because I had all this credit that I wasn't using. They're trying to get me to use it. So one thing I found is paying it off and stop using it, and then they're going to come back to you.
Yeah.
So a little bit outside of what I do, but personal experience.
All right, so let's kind of get back on track here. So we talked about being disorganized and how many leads fall through the cracks and how many sales you lose and, and that whole piece. We talked about outdated technology and how that can hurt you. Do we talk about detail and the devil's in the detail? I love this one.
Welcome to my life.
Oh my gosh. I love this one because, it's funny. We were just on a call earlier this morning, and somebody missed something in an email. Well, they completely did all of this work only because they didn't read the whole email, and now they had to go back and redo all that work. And it's so, it's nobody wants to read email, right? But It's the devil's in the detail. When you skim things, just be very careful. People lose business, lose money. I couldn't even tell you how often I'll get an email asking me a question and the person is droning and droning on. Like they tell you every little detail and you've kind of figured it out after the first 3 sentences. I need to call them, I have the answer, or let me respond back to them. And then down at the very bottom is, oh, Colleen, I wanted to refer a new member to Small Business USA. You're like, why would you put that at the
start with that, right? And then, yeah.
That's my reward for reading the whole thing. Yes. So, the devil's in the detail. So many people miss so much because they, I'm just hearing an echo, I'm sorry. But they miss so much because they don't take the time to read and do it right the first time. So scope creep. We talked about not backing up software. I want to talk about training. We talked about poor customer service. But I want to talk about scope creep. And I don't know if anybody's heard that, scope creep. And failure to calculate soft costs. We did that a little bit together, but I think we talked about a whole bunch of things that affect those soft costs of a business, like the other pieces that go into, making something happen. And I think a lot of business owners, I see, especially consultants, I see they make this mistake all the time with scope creep. Scope creep is saying, oh, yeah, it's going to take me 2 hours to solve your problem, Andrew, but then you're not adding all the little things. The time it's going to take to do the report, the time it's going to take to travel back and forth or research or make phone calls. You don't add all those little, the supplies, the tools, everything that you need to really deliver on what you're delivering, whether it's time or money, ends up in this unbilled space that really affects your ROI. Can you think of any others? Scope creep. It's so hard to say.
Yeah. I mean, it happens. I'm guilty of it. I'm the one that thinks, oh, yeah, I'll take care of this. And then I go, oh, wait a minute, but what about this? But what about this? And I'll generate 50 questions for myself. Scope creep. And what I do is I kind of handle the scope creep, I guess is the way to put it. There's a lot of little technical things, nuanced things that, in this industry that, I have somebody call me and say, oh, hey, I've got this going on. And it'll take me 1 minute to take down the note. And I'm like, okay, let me find out. I call, oh, that was this is that, that's this. You go to this department, that department, you try to figure out what's going on. Part of scope creep is I can almost kind of live in that, is that I deal with a lot of these little problems that sounds like a simple little question, but when you try to get it resolved, is 15 phone calls. And, then you actually have to have technical competence to talk to the person on the other side to figure out, what you're even talking about. But yeah, I think sometimes people don't realize what's going on behind the scenes for somebody who's actually taking care of their accounts. So that's one thing that I always try to manage, so that, the credit card part of it doesn't become one of those scope creep. It becomes I'll just call Andrew and then he'll get back to me with an answer.
Yeah, I want to mention what JP Design Theory is saying. It's also the customer's demand starts to change as the project continues. And
Absolutely.
JP suggests that the best way to tackle this is getting a written request for the project at the beginning, outlining all that will be done. And I love the next part, and I think this is where business owners make a huge mistake, is if your customer's demand is changing, I don't believe you have asked the right questions and qualified them correctly in the beginning. I think there's this other piece that, and especially if it continues to happen, you need to stop yourself and you need to ask yourself, why is this happening? Where is it? Why did I miss this? Why didn't I ask those questions? And keep track of that, especially, and also with Scope Creep in particular. I'm going to close. I don't know what it is, but I just keep hearing an echo. I apologize. With Scope Creep in particular, I think you need to write all that stuff down.
Yep.
Like, you need to take the time to say, guess what? I had this problem. I'm going to just write it down in a little notebook. These little distractions, these little things that keep popping up. Because at the end of the month or the end of the year, you're going to find that there's a theme around those little problems. And there's a root cause. And if you do a little Six Sigma work, you're going to notice that you can really solve that where it started. Maybe it's in the communication or the onboarding or the training of your team, or, there's a million different places that you can go with this. But people lose money all the time here.
Yeah, I kind of deal with that from time to time as well. In that sometimes businesses will come to me that they know they need to take payments, but existing businesses tend to be a little bit more sometimes organized, sometimes worse. But there's a lot of times where I've actually had to develop a process for somebody. Okay, so you take payment for your service. Okay, how are you going to record this person? Where are you going to, how are you going to know how many people that you have for this service versus this service? Right. And part of what I end up doing is forcing organization. We work with QuickBooks a lot as well. We have integrated processing with QuickBooks. So a lot of times that forces people an organization, it forces organization where they would do it on their own. Now it's like, okay, I have to put this money into a specific account. I have to put this into a specific area. So now I have to think about it in that manner, as opposed to just, kind of just flying by the seat of your pants. So that's I think part of the way that the counter to scope creep sometimes is organization and or having a clear conversation from the get-go where you kind of just go over everything. Like, okay, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about this? And this way, when they come back to you, it's not, why didn't this work? It's, oh, I think I've got answers to some of these. And then, it's like, okay, now we can move ahead.
Yeah. So well said. I also think if you're a consultant or you own a business, and at the end of the day, you kind of come back and say, I have a lot of clients come and they join Small Business USA and say, I'm fully booked, but I'm not making any money. I had a marketing consultant, God love her. She's like, Colleen, I'm so busy. I don't need you. I don't need Small Business USA. I'm so busy, but I need help. And I'm like, well, why don't you just hire somebody to do this? Oh, I can't hire anybody. She ended up joining. And what was fabulous about it is that she ended up we cut her time in half because she didn't realize she wasn't organized and billing for her time appropriately. And when we looked at the things that she was wasting her time on that she could just take a VA, she ended up making twice as much money. But you have to be, I love the idea. In our marketing program, we have this segment on time management. And it really challenges you for the course of 3 days to just write down everything that you spend time on.
Yep, I did that one.
Did you? It's eye-opening, right? It's so hard.
I was slamming my head against the wall after I finished writing it down. I'm like, wow, this is really what I did today. But, sometimes things come up that you have to just deal with. And what I do, everything is an emergency. It's, people they're either not getting their money or they're not able to take money in. That's two things that, you have to pick up the phone when they call. But that being said, it did force me to do a little more organization. One thing it made me do is come in early. I found out that I get work done the first 2 hours of the day or the last, 2 hours after everybody goes home. And sometimes that last 2 hours after everybody, all the businesses are closed and everybody goes home, I've got somewhere else I have to be. So coming in early has been like my little chip away at the building my business part before the phone starts ringing and I have to, put out fires kind of thing.
Yeah, I always think I'm brain dead from 3 to 5 in the afternoon. Like, really nobody wants to status with me. So I usually go run at 3 o'clock or go out and walk the dog at 3 o'clock because it re-energizes me. But I think it's really important to know when your times are. Like
Yep.
I'm super productive between 3 and 5 in the morning. I don't normally get up at 3.
Not
I'll
hours.
start working at 4 because if I work from 4 to 6, I get more done from 4 to 6 in the morning than most people can get done in.
There's no distraction. There's nothing.
And I'm
It's just
fresher. I'm a morning person, so I'm fresher. So I'm more productive, and I do a better job. I just want to I want to wrap up with JP Design added. You make your client think about it with the scope, like how far they want to go, and a lot of times you can tell. When you wrote that, JP, all I kept thinking of was you can tell on somebody's face when they want more. And they're just not ready at that moment, but they're going to buy more later. Like, just prepare yourself. Read your customer and your client. And Peter said halfway through check-in with the team is always helpful. We're halfway through the call sometimes. And I like to read these when they're really great. I love to read them because on our replay, you don't always see all the great live chat that's here. But so we're halfway through the cost time. We weigh through the project. If not, we stop and recalibrate. I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think that's a great call, Peter. So, okay, I want to go into employee training and turnover. And we know turnover is the biggest waste of money, right? You hire somebody, they don't work out, you hire them incorrectly. We had a member of a board, and I'm thinking, Scott, you probably know who I'm talking about. But we had a member of a board who said, I need to hire 3 people. Well, I have a cousin that's great at this, and I have my fiance's friend is perfect at this, and I have this other person. Oh my God, you guys, nepotism is evil. It's bad. When we first started Small Business USA, we started Small Business Connecticut, and the number one phone call we got was, how do I fire my husband, my wife, my brother, my son? It was awful. Making great hiring decisions is a really important part, but also invested time in training them. You can have the greatest person in the world. You can hire me, and I think I'm a pretty hard worker, and I'm really loyal. But if you put me in charge of customer service and made me have complaints all the time, you're going to fire me in a minute because I hate that would just bring me down. I don't think I'd be good at it. So hiring the right people for the right job is really important, and making sure that you spend time training them. And I'm sure you see that all the time, Andrew. Like people, you were just talking about the credit card readers, like cashiers not trained and team. It brings the experience to the wrong place and loses customers.
Yeah, one thing I always try to do to counter that is, I got a feedback now. Well, okay, one thing I always try to do to counter that is, like when I always set people up, one thing I always do is I download the terminal so it's ready to go. Because one thing a lot of companies do is like to ship a blank terminal out and then let the merchant deal with downloading it. And I can't tell you how many people that you'll annoy in that manner. But I always like to do a simple cheat sheet because I never understand that there's going to be turnover, and you might go there and explain it to the business owner, and they might go, "Oh, I get it," and then the employee does not get it, and then the business owner really didn't get it. They just said that they got it because they had to get you out of their office to get their next thing done, and now nobody knows what they're doing. So one thing that I always try to focus on is leaving a simple cheat sheet. There's a huge technical instruction book that goes on and on and on. When really most employees only need to do a few different functions. So I have like a simple way to do that. I also support all my accounts directly. So, when you do get that new person in, they call me instead of calling a 1-800 number and getting a different response and a different person every time. So I do it with a lot of employee training. And, part of it too is I've had some employees dislike me after the employee training because I'm like, oh, well, when you run this transaction, you just can't put in the card number and expiration date and hit enter. And they go, well, what do you mean you can't do that? Well, you can, it will process, but you're costing the business more money because you're not qualifying the transaction properly by including full data. So there's a lot of little things that go into, training employees, not just to do their job, but to do their job efficiently. And that's just my one little take and, one little area that I deal in. Or credit or debit. Like how often do you get asked when you go to a store, credit or debit, credit or debit? It's funny. I noticed the smart business owners, if it's over a certain dollar amount, they'll say, is this a debit card? If it's under a certain dollar amount, they just run it as credit because there's actually a break-even point between where credit is cheaper than debit and vice versa. So, sometimes that's another part of employee training where you don't realize you're getting additional efficiency just by training your employee the right way actually affects your credit card processing fee. I mean, nobody puts 2 and 2 together on that, but that's kind of part of it. And if that's just one small example of my business, I can imagine how many other industries and how many other things that if you did this way instead of this way, at the end of the day, it just adds up to a big difference.
Oh, that's interesting. That's fascinating. Hey, I totally lost my train of thought on training though. I got so into that conversation. I didn't want to, I totally lost what I was going to say, but,
Yeah. Going back and retraining somebody that somebody left that was already trained to do. I couldn't think of a more, direct way to waste your time.
yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. All right. Are we ready to move into the top five detrimental mistakes, what the power of one can bring? So
Go ahead.
everybody knows, right? I know most everybody on this call that I can see, but I'm sure we have a lot of visitors elsewhere. But so I'm always power of many for me is, listen, I have led giant teams. I 5,000 and 6,000 employees, and I have worked with some really, really smart people. But never have I been the smartest person in the room, and never have I met the smartest person in the room, because that person doesn't exist. But when you pull a group of people together, there is just nothing so inspiring as getting everybody to look at your business from a different perspective. So I am a big believer in the power of many. No matter for 20, or I hate to even say the number of years I have been driving sales for businesses, but 26 or 27 years it is now that I've been driving sales for businesses. You will learn the most from the most unsuspecting places. I always say, if you own a store, the person who grabs your carts is the absolute smartest person in your business some days, because they're the ones that hear the unfiltered reviews from your customers. They're the ones that see people leave upset or happy. It's so the shipper, your trucker, the one who's delivering shipments to another business. I mean, they hear it. It's really remarkable. But
a lot of times, the frontline employees are where, people are sitting in a room thinking and talking and coming up with all these ideas in this back boardroom somewhere, completely ignoring the front end person who's actually servicing the client all day. So I think that I couldn't agree more. That's where a lot of the best ideas come from, if they have the proper channel to be heard.
Yeah, you know what is interesting? So they did a study of 40,000 people last year, and they found out of 40,000 people who liked their jobs, they were happy in their jobs, they liked their bosses, 93% of those people would lie if their boss asked them if they had an idea. They would say they liked it.
Yeah.
93% would say they liked it when they didn't think it was a good idea, or they would avoid the question so they didn't have to give their boss bad news. I mean, that's crazy, right? But it's also scary. So that's the power of many. If you guys don't have a group that really gives you honest feedback, I think everybody needs that in their world. But it was interesting as I was doing some research to find what are the biggest mistakes business owners make and the biggest way they lose money. It all came down to the power of one. So the power of one could be detrimental. So it was kind of cool having one product. If you only sell one product, and I know you don't, Andrew, you sell more than one. If you only sell one product, times are going to change. Business is going to change. It moves fast. You need to have another plan. You need to have more than one thing that you're selling. What else do you sell? You sell merchant services, credit card services?
Well, we do credit card processing as part of it. I touched on point of sale systems. We do point of sale systems equipment. Another thing we do is business funding. We do receivables purchasing, which has actually it's also called merchant cash advance, but that's a big part of our business as well. This is, for businesses that can't get money through the bank due to lack of time in business is one of the big ones. There's a lot of businesses that are good, viable businesses, but they're not 3 or 4 years in business like the bank's looking for. We have options to fund them. For credit, seasonality is a big one too. We'll do funding where we take the repayment as a percentage of credit card transactions. So, great example is like the hotel, motel, restaurant, bar right by the shore.
Stop.
Actually, I do have a Holiday Inn as a client. I got to call them later on today.
Nobody here wants to hear me sing.
But a lot of those kind of businesses, they'll take money during their slow season. So that they could, keep the lights on sometimes, or to do improvements in the off season, and then they repay the money during their busy season as a percentage of credit card transactions. So this way, when their volume's down in the winter, if it's 10% of their batch each day, if they're doing $20,000 a month in the winter, they might repay $2,000. They're doing $200,000 a month in the summer. They don't even feel that 10% coming out. So, we also do business funding. We also do ACH services. A lot of businesses don't realize, they could be using ACH. You don't get the real-time transaction like you do with a credit card where it says approved on the spot. It's more like a check where it has to settle into the account. But, for certain business types like, storage units, daycares, gym memberships, you could turn on ACH and it costs way less than credit card. We could even integrate that into the same platform so that they could do both transaction types. We do check services, electronic and remote check deposit services. A lot of businesses will spend all their time going back and forth to the bank. You could just scan those right through and deposit them right into your bank account. You could even do that with a guarantee where it almost works like a credit card, where if you scan that check through a scanner, it does a quick check and it either says yes, it's approved, or no, it's not going to go. And you could take a check and have it work almost like a credit card. So there's a lot of little things.
Don't sell one product.
Correct. Yeah.
So
people have to get paid one way or the other, and whatever way it is.
I think you have to diversify, and no matter what business you're in, you have to diversify.
We don't really do much with cash. Outside of that, if you're going to take a payment, we could. There's a way to handle it electronically.
Awesome. The second thing is only having one method of promotion. So if you're putting all of your eggs in one basket and you're only advertising on Facebook, or you only advertise in the Hartford Current or whatever it is, you're setting yourself up for risk, because business and your viewer changes, and people get a minimum of 700 marketing images a day. And if you're only going to hit them on Facebook and that's the only way that they're going to see you, you may be forgotten in that other sea of information.
Yep.
Having one client, right? You can have one client who pays all the bills and you're so happy, but what happens? If they go out of business, they change, they find somebody else, you lose.
I'll tell you, when I got my first, going back when I first started, after a little while, I got my first decent, really decent client. And I'm like, wow, this is half my portfolio. It's just one client. Sometimes I'd lay there at night like, geez, if this person leaves, what am I going to do? That's half my portfolio. I mean, so you have to get you have to spread it out, because if you have that one key client, I mean, it's always the 80-20 rule. I mean, I deal with it myself. 20% of my clients make 80% of the revenue. But, when it's that one key client that you're serving, I mean, how many manufacturers have gone out of business because they make parts for X, and X company decides to get up and move or go out of business or move to Mexico or something like that. Now that your whole business model is shot. So you definitely have to have that diversity, for sure.
Sometimes you need somebody to help you see outside of that box too, because it is, well, I need to really deliver to Pratt & Whitney. Well, if you lose that Pratt & Whitney account, right, then what happens? Or UT account.
Yep.
Okay, so one product, one method of promotion, one client, one employee. That's also another mistake. And we've seen this a lot, that one employee, and what happens if that person gets sick or quits, or what if they steal, or that one employee. So what do? It's always better to have two part-time employees than one full-time employee, if you can find that. But also having that plan and really thinking through what would happen if. Yep. And a lot of people, they're excited to get that one employee, right? But that kind of gets you into a danger zone as well, because, again, all your eggs in one basket.
Yep. Anything could happen. I mean, they could leave, or you never know. So it's just kind of one of those things that you have to make sure that you're planning for. And, they have key person insurance. I know that they have that kind of thing, and just a contingency plan. It's a big part of it.
And then the last one is a one-person business.
Yep.
So if something happens to you, what happens? If I got sick today with Small Business USA, I know I have this amazing team around me, right? They don't even care if I'm here, right? So, but there's this amazing team of incredible advisors. If you are a consultant and it's just you, and somebody hits you at a traffic light tomorrow, what happens? So making sure that you have these contingency plans and you know what would happen if. But it's really interesting that the 5 biggest mistakes for businesses all were around the number one. I thought that was just kind of fun, because I know about the power of many.
I was going to say, I've had clients that have gone out of business. The mom and pop shop, and mom gets sick or pop gets sick, or the single person entity. I mean, it's bad, but it does happen, and it's a business reality, and it's like it's sad too sometimes if it's not the one person, if it's like a two-man shop or a two-person shop, and one person has a problem and the other person's unable to continue. I've watched I see credit card volumes. I've watched the business do this, and you kind of see where it's going to go, and you're like, oh man. But that's definitely, you got to have that backup plan for sure.
Yeah, you do, for sure. Peter, I love you, Peter. It is scary, right? But I know that you're in the process of re-envisioning your strategy, and I'm so excited to see where that brings you. But I love, I love when we see a company recognize that there's other places to go with their business, and there's other strategies. And I think it's people like Andrew and Scott and Peter, and you put them all together at a table, and these great minds all collide and start brainstorming, and you just think ways that you have never thought before. So I appreciate you kind of batting around these like ways to capture profit that most businesses don't think of today. What are we missing? Do we miss any ways to capture profit that we didn't mention? Anybody listening have any ideas?
I would say just make it easy for them to give you money. If you can make it easy, can't tell you how many. I'll give you an example. Nonprofits I deal with that they have if you want to donate, you could send a check here, and it's like you could have all the goodwill in the world and all the intention of doing that, but is it going to happen? It's going to get written down somewhere, and it's going to maybe get done, maybe not get done. Being able to do it right on the spot. If think about GoFundMe. I mean, all that is hey, I got a credit card to give you money right now. So part of it is just making it easy for your customers to do business with you. I think that's one of the biggest things is people make too many obstacles to the sale. That's one of the biggest things hampers businesses for sure that I see.
Agree. And of course, if you want to capture more profit, join Small Business USA. But hey, I do want to. I want you to introduce yourself and tell everybody who you are one more time, and then I want to talk about networking golf, which is something really exciting that's happening for our members and the community soon. So go ahead, Andrew. Andrew Moran, tell everybody who you are and how they get a hold of you. And everyone on this call needs to call Andrew and just make sure that you're at the right rate.
Let me turn my phone off mute first. Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm Andrew Moran. I'm a certified payments professional with Merchant Solutions LLC. Again, if you haven't picked up on it, we do credit card processing, business funding, and point of sale system service. Big thing that sets us apart. We've got great rates. We've got the technology that many companies might have but don't know how to apply. It really comes down to connecting there's this, there's that feature, there's this feature. Well, how does the business use that feature? That's really where the conversation with the business comes in, and actually understanding the business. It's not just I've got a sales slick and I've got these things for you here. Being able to actually understand the business, figure out what's going to be useful for them, what's not going to be useful to them, instead of just throwing a book of things at them that try to make them figure out. That's really where we come in, is with the expertise, not just the technical expertise, but the business acumen to actually talk to somebody, figure out what they're doing, figure out how what we do fits into what they do, and then make it all come together, and then stand there and service it when they have the questions.
Awesome. Peter has a client for you, potential client for you. So that's awesome.
Is Peter local?
Peter is local. So cool. Yeah, definitely write down his number because it's going to disappear soon. Get out your pen.
All right.
Hey, and I just want to talk to everyone about networking golf. So all of our members automatically are enrolled in networking golf. Networking golf is a really cool. It's like LinkedIn for golfers. You don't need to know anybody. You just need to join, and you get put into our network, and we invite you to golf games, and you don't pay unless you golf. It was this brainchild that was, I asked someone one day, we had more members outside of Connecticut than in Connecticut, and I made a phone call and said, can you create this program? And turns out this program didn't exist. So I am so happy that Small Business USA is able to launch networking golf with Scott Gumbar, and we're really creating a community of golfers and a way that we can get you invited to foursomes and help you get on the green more and golf and just have fun. We're negotiating rates. We have like all kinds of networking events and golf lessons and whatever level golfer you are. But what we know that people who golf make 19% more, and that 54% of business owners enjoy closing business and the majority of businesses closed for 54% of business owners on the golf course. So golf is a really important piece of your business strategy, but more importantly for me, with Small Business USA, when we started, for me, it was about how I grew up in a small business that failed. After 20 years, my mom was very successful, and she was a rainmaker, and when she got sick, the business fell apart. But for 20 years, I remember her just working morning to night, and she just didn't really have a life of her own. She had a life for her business, and it affects the whole family. And so for me, Small Business USA is not only about helping you as a business owner grow and create your business, but also finding ways to balance it out. Like, business should be fun. You should be doing what you enjoy while you're doing your business. So if there's better ways to do business, like on the golf course instead of on an office or in a coffee shop, I think you need to go after it and do it. So we want to create that. So you'll see that we fund a website called Generating Winners to help you with your teens. We are really passionate about networking golf. We think it's a great way to grow your business. But we are launching. So the first 250 people in every state and every large community are free to join. So make sure you go to networkandgolf.com and sign up. And if you go to the opposite, golf and network, that's our secret little spot for people to go sign up for free if you're not a Small Business USA member. So the first 250 in every community are free. So we want to make sure that there's a lot of choices, people that you can just reach out to and golf with. And everybody that's on that list are people that we know want to be invited to golf. So we're going to invite you. We're going to give you the opportunity to invite anybody you want. It's kind of a cool platform. So that is this week. We beta test it. It finally goes onto our server, and we put 250 people on there and poke holes in it. And hopefully, so far it's running great. So hopefully we launch that to the world in like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So we're pretty excited. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to put the free site on here for anybody who wants to see. If it's golfandnetwork.com. That's the free site. I think you'll be able to see it. So if there's any openings in your hometown, you'll be able to join for free through that site. So, and then it'll go, it's $25 a month after that. But get in now while it's free. So you don't want to have to pay later. Awesome. So sorry to take up some of our call about networking golf, but my phone and my email has been flooded now that the weather's gotten nicer in New England. So
everybody's looking for an excuse to go outside, right?
Oh, it's so awesome. I Peter, it'll be my first hole in one in my life, but
that's a great way. Yes. Start this whole.
I went through the roof. I was with a boyfriend at the time, and he was like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "It's inches." I mean, like, who does that?
That'd be a great thing. Start this whole networking group and then go and hit a hole in one your first shot. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not that great of a golfer, which I think is the beauty of the program. You don't have to be a great golfer. So we choose your you can choose your handicap. And so you could do beginner, advanced beginner. And we don't do handicap, like you don't have to go get your mathematical rating through the PGA to figure out what your handicap is. But then there's, a bogey golfer. And you choose, and there's a leisure golfer. I'll golf with anybody kind of person. I stopped playing golf. I had a hard time getting past the window.
Oh, he's on my level here.
He's on fire. I see a good connection happening with you.
I stick to fishing. That's one thing I can actually do. But.
Oh my gosh! So we will do clinics and beginner. There's a lot of beginner stuff. So there'll be a fun way to learn golf and meet people as well. So. All right, enough about networking golf. Andrew, oh my God, we lasted an hour and 10 minutes. We were going for half an hour. We had so much. This is awesome. You gave us so much information. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Glad you called, and I'm glad this all came together.
Awesome. Me too. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Have a great week. I'm Colleen Ferrari with Small Business USA. You can reach me at Colleen@smallbusinessus.com. There's no A in the email. We give all the A's to our clients. I don't know. I've noticed it's being held for ransom, that A. But join us. I'd love to talk to you. Thank you so much. Andrew, bye. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.